Hello and welcome to another video. I wanted to make this video to explain the new structure at Manchester United. At least not all of the structure, not everybody who's involved and appointed, but the people who INEOS have put in place or kept in place in the case of Erik ten Hag and a few others, at least for now. So let's break down from the top down the new structure, starting with Omar Barada. This is what the organizational chart at Manchester United looks like as of now, based on the hires. There are other individuals that I haven't included on here, but these are the main names I wanted to speak of and kind of where they fall in this structure. Omar Barada, obviously from Manchester City, has experience in the commercial aspect and sponsorships and all of that, and will, of course, be, as CEO, the oversight over the entire club from a football perspective and from a financial perspective. I don't think we'll have two CEOs anymore. I think it is conjoined. One of the things that is definitely different in terms of INEOS's view of Manchester United as opposed to Ed Woodward's view of Manchester United is your commercial success and your financial success is tied to your results on the pitch and the football side of things, and you can't just separate them out and pretend they aren't the same. So that's where Omar Barada comes in: finance, commercial, contracts, oversight. He's likely going to be, in a lot of ways, the say no guy, someone you want like that in finance, who's looking at the numbers and saying, we're not going to be doing that. We're not going to be going over this prices. We're not going to be doing this and that. He's had a lot of experience in that, working hand in hand at City with their, of course, head of recruitment and all of that. So that is where Omar Barada falls in the ladder. Dan Ashworth, now in place, now started, now active, will, of course, be overseeing as the director all football activities, including the academy, including the women's team, and including, of course, the men's first team recruitment and everything. He will be tasked, of course, with implementing a best-in-class overall structure. He's not necessarily scouting players. He's not necessarily even negotiating deals. But he will be looking at the whole thing and saying, do we have the right coach? Do we have the right director? Do we have the right recruitment people? Are we going the right way? Are we setting the right style of play? Are we managing everything properly? Do we have the organizational setup? Do we have the support for the academy? Do we have the support for the women's team? And I think this is a key appointment for some of the areas that are underserved so far under INEOS, including the women's team. One thing I didn't include on here, which will need adding, is a women's director of football, as I believe the one that they had before departed, and you would want to see that, and that would be somebody working with them. There is an assistant sporting director, Andy O'Boyle, who I believe has continued to be there, but I was just including what has been hired and who is still kind of actively in place, per my understanding, just on this. So that will be Dan Ashworth's responsibility. All football, including the academy, including the women's team, all of it. Looking and seeing and overall that. So essentially, Sir Dave Brailsford's kind of almost been the sporting director, but not somebody who knows football. But he's been in there looking at these things. Ashworth and Barada will continue as the main leadership team to coordinate regularly with INEOS, with Dave Brailsford and such on certain aspects that he would be able to help with, because there's also the fitness, the medical, all of those things that INEOS would still be involved in, that Sir Dave Brailsford is still an expert in, and where INEOS sport resources can come into play. But Dan Ashworth and Omar Barada are likely to be kind of the finance and the football balance here of INEOS's management of United. Moving to the left, we obviously have Erik ten Hag as the manager, the men's first team manager. And as it's currently set up in place, he's not necessarily beneath the technical director or anybody else. That's his department. He's there, but he would be reporting directly to Dan Ashworth. Obviously, then below it, he has all of his coaches and everything like that. One of the things that changes a little is he's probably not running the academy anymore. That is where Jason Wilcox will come into play as the technical director. His purpose, his goal would be the club style recruitment, making sure that there's a style that goes from the academy all the way up through every level of football, that the way that United want to play is being translated at each level. That recruitment is aligned to this same strategy from youth through senior, through all the way up. Also evaluating the players in the first team and in the academy, who's ready, who fits, who doesn't, who is in there, who are the players that need improvement, where do they go, all of that, as well as evaluating the coaching staff at all levels to say, are they in alignment with the direction that we want to go, how we want to play, and what we want to do things. That will be Jason Wilcox's remit. He will report to Dan Ashworth on his findings and all of that. And also, of course, this is a cohesive relationship where everybody's going to be coordinating with each other. So we will do so with Erik ten Hag too, especially over things like the academy players and how they're going to be moving up and down and all of that. That's going to be a vital component. Then there's Christopher Vivell, Director of Global Talent. This new one is a short-term thing for now, but his idea, I think, would be to evaluate the overall recruitment and identification of targets in big alignment with how INEOS want to identify targets before they're super expensive, and where United have regularly missed out on buying the players when they're young and before they're the big stars, even though they've identified them. You think about, there's been a lot of examples, Alvarez and Šeško and Caicedo and all the more, but actually getting the right ones. And in conjunction with Jason Wilcox, actually, how do we have a plan to develop these players and use them so they don't go to waste like we have done effectively with Facundo Pellistri and Ahmad? Not saying those situations can't be recovered, but we have been poor at developing those young talents when we have actually obtained some of them. But that's one of the goals, certainly, is spotting emerging talent, that they can get them so that maybe we've got ready-made players to get in there. How often do United get to bring in someone they signed for the academy a couple years ago and who's actually good enough to get into the team to rotate in cup games and things like that, which you regularly see at City and Arsenal and Liverpool and elsewhere? Well, we need more of that. That one's obvious why. The other factor in bringing him in is his expertise in the multi-club model. Now, obviously, that's a bit of a standstill at the moment because we can't do much in terms of Nice and transfers in between at this point in time due to being in the same tournament. But that restriction will end someday. There's also Lausanne, and there is the potential to build relationships with other clubs. And there he will give advisement directly to Ashworth, Barada, and to INEOS in terms of what can be done and how. Are there ways to move these emerging talents through different pathways before they come to United? Still remaining at the club as of now and quite active this summer is Steve Brown. Steve Brown, active this summer, head of recruitment, contacting agents, players, and other clubs over transfers to kind of get the ball rolling, helping to align and organize the scouts and analysts. We have a huge array of scouts, huge array of analysts, organizing them, what should they be looking for, what they should maybe doing. A lot of the management of this. So maybe as of now, he remains a very active part of this summer's plans. He's been a key piece of it. Whether he gets replaced by Vivell or somebody else, or whether they say, hey, this guy's doing great, he's going to stay, we can work with him. Cool. I've never heard anything really bad about Steve Brown. There's not much to say. I don't want to get into trying to evaluate things that I have no business evaluating. So he's still there. He's still active, still working, still helping United through the recruitment this summer. So these are kind of the key components as of now. As I said, there's probably going to be additional hires that could come into play, especially on the women's side of things, perhaps on the academy side of things. We will see how Darren Fletcher fits into this following certain talks as the coaching staff shakes up. He might have a role that is aside and aligned with all of these on this, first team to academy pathways, that he's in charge of something like that. So there could certainly still be more adjustments to all of this to come. But this is a very good, I'm not showing the full United hierarchy, but a very good setup in terms of key personnel at the moment that have been brought in, kept in these areas right now. Like I said, there's Andy O'Boyle, who's assisting the sporting director, deputy sporting director, who's probably helping with all this because it's a huge job. When you talk about the men's team, which they've gotten to and they're working on, the academy, which they need to put a little more attention on, not that it's going poorly, and then the women's team, which they have not gotten to yet, and now ideally will with Dan Ashworth in place. A lot to do, a lot to get done, and a lot in order to make United exactly what it should be and top of the level. But these are good appointments, and I think that certainly part of the overall strategy is we've got all these guys in place now. Now we can evaluate, now we can get business done, and by next summer, you will see a fully fledged team. Now, I think they want to make some moves by bringing Chris Vivell in this year, potentially for the rest of their budget, where they could find, when you take like left back or center back, if they cannot get Braithwaite or they need that left back still, or another young winger, should Sancho and Greenwood depart, can we find someone that's not 50, 60 million to get in there and develop? And that is where Vivell, I think, could come in and could help. It would be great if we didn't miss on players like Anselminho and others where we just haven't had the resources to set them up. So I think that's a big part of that hire, where it could have an effect this summer beyond the main signings that we are making, is finding some value that could save us in the long run. So hopefully this makes sense in terms of what everybody does, where they're at in the club, and what happens. The players are going to likely be, their agents, people at the club. Who are they having talks with? When I say they're having talks and conversations, well, it's probably now going to be Dan Ashworth, who's managing that, but in definite alignment with Jason Wilcox as well. And then I would suggest that Omar Barad will be sitting behind there saying, okay, that's what they want. That's what they said. This is what we can do financially. But Wilcox and Ashworth, I think, are going to be kind of the key people managing the players more outside of, I'm saying, in a different management to the first team, coaching, game day, practice, all of that. They're going to be responsible for more managing the squad as a whole, and the club and the football side of it as a whole, in terms of, the talks, the players, all of that. So in addition, on transfers, that means everybody here is likely to be involved in those discussions about who they're going for, where, to be aligned and to make sure that that everybody's on the same page and everybody has a voice in all of this. And that should remain with Erik ten Hag staying, even with the veto and all that. It's still going to be an involvement of everybody, and the club aren't going to pursue things without agreement among all parties here. So I see a very positive setup with this, and it's quite a departure from the names that would have filled this before. And Ed Woodward or Richard Arnold, nobody for a long time, then John Murdoch for a bit, Fletcher, but not really, nobody for that director of global talent. Big differences, big improvements across the board. And what you see on the pitch is a direct result of what happens off the pitch. That is a fact. That is what happens. That is how life works. And so these steps, while they're not a win on their own, they are the right actions. And I could not be more positive about the way that this organizational setup is looking for the future of United. Okay, thank you for watching this. If you liked it, leave a comment below. Comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. Let me know your thoughts, and I will see you in the next one.